Leeds, Leeds, Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours wants to record 1,000 loiners over the course of this, the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission here is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, did during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. Can we turn things around? We'll find out. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and just tell me what they do all day and let me record how this affects us. Thank you for listening. What did you want to be when you grew up?
That's a quite difficult question because I wanted to be many things. But I think in particular, I really wanted to be a lawyer, a solicitor. I've always had this passion for defending people, and my mom was always hoping that I will be a lawyer someday. Unfortunately for her, I am not. However, not yet, but I do something that involves defending people and defending people's rights. So I think, although I'm not necessarily what I wanted to be when I was a kid, I'm still getting the sense of it with the job that I am currently doing.
You're listening to Series 5, Episode 19, and to my guest, Alina Manaila. This is another Squadcast interview recorded on the 19th of April, 2024. Hello, listener. Alina Manaila is 27 years old. Born in Romania and raised in the south of Spain, in Almeria, Alina moved to the UK after turning 19. Living down south in London for a few months, then moving to Leeds, Alina has been here ever since. Alina started working as a care assistant since she arrived in the UK and has worked her way up from there. She is currently working as a registered estate manager for a retirement living development. Alina enjoys helping people maintain their independence and live their best retirement life. She has always been an advocate for others. Since being little, Alina's mum always thought she would end up being a lawyer because, her mother says, she defends everyone. Right, let's do this, episode 129 of Working Hours with Alina Manaila. So let's jump straight into what are you doing now then?
I work, at the minute, I am an estate manager for a retired development. So retired people just move into the development to have a better quality of life and remain independent, but also knowing that there is someone on site in the event that they have an emergency or they need medical assistance and things like this. But I've worked in the health and social care sector for 9 years now.
Let's go straight into how did you get into it?
Well,
did you start with the law, or did that never kind of come up? And
no, I've never done anything in regards to the law dream. I came to the UK 9 years ago, and this opportunity was presented to me to work in care as a care assistant. So I said, why not? I'll give you a try. I've never done something like that before in my entire life. So initially I was a bit, thinking about it. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Why if it's not my vocation? And then I gave it a try and I absolutely loved it. So I decided to remain in the sector, but just work my way up. I realized that if you work your way up, you can make a bigger difference than just going and visiting people and supporting them to live as independent as possible at home. So I just loved it and I made a career out of it. I started as a care assistant with one business, and then I worked for another business as a care assistant. And then I moved the previous company that I was with for almost 4 years. And that's where I learned everything from the managerial side. I started as a team leader, then I became a deputy manager, and then I became the registered manager. And a couple of months ago, I changed my job into the current job that I have, which is the estate manager.
How hard has that progression been? Have you been sort of encouraged through the journey by people? Have you had to push it? Has it been quite easy to do, or has it been quite a hard
I
process?
have I have been pushed to progress in my previous role. My previous manager, the director of the company, was extremely supportive, but the previous businesses that I worked with were not like that. So I didn't get that sensation that people would want me to progress necessary. And even when opportunities were there and I applied for the opportunities to progress, then I've been denied, saying that I don't necessarily have enough experience for a certain position, which it was quite sad for me because although I don't have the experience, I was eager to learn. And I think a lot of times people just get put down by someone telling them, oh, you don't have enough experience or you can't do this, when in fact you can actually do it. If you want to learn and you have the passion, you can do anything, you can do any job.
And you can get yourself exposed to the experience. If you've got a good manager that'll be like, yeah, go and get some experience of it, a couple of hours or whatever. Um,
Definitely.
are you more into the strategy side, or is it more that you feel you can get more done you know, as you could do more at a higher level, you can improve things for more people?
I think I have the power, to call it that way, to make a difference and to improve things that unfortunately as a care assistant you don't necessarily have. So when you're doing the care assistant position, you have to follow instructions. When you're in a managerial position, you are the one that makes the instructions for the people to follow. So having seen the side of the care assistant and have seen the side of the customers that use the service and listening to their needs, I'm now in a position where I know what to implement in order to make sure that they're receiving what they want,
Hmm.
but also to make the work environment more enjoyable for the staff. The health and social care is very underestimated by the whole population of the UK. Everyone sees being a care assistant as a quite low job instead of seeing it as such a rewarding job, and the fact that these people actually make a difference on people's lives. Even throughout COVID, everyone was clapping for the NHS, everyone was praising the NHS for the fabulous job that they were doing, but no one actually sat down and thought, what about the care assistants that go and visit people in their own homes, that put their lives at danger, that put their families at danger of catching COVID or catching any other illnesses? Because we go from house to house without knowing what's expected to find in that house, but we still go every single day we attend. And
Yeah.
people don't realize sometimes how difficult that position is. They just think, ah, it's just a job, just get on with it.
Like you say, at times like that, you're also exposing yourself to risk. I mean, even taking care of people at any level is there's always risk involved to yourself.
Is
Um,
always. I can promise you that I could write a book with all the times that I've been beaten up, hit, sweared at, yelled at, people pulling my hair, pulling my BB. I have many stories that I could tell. They're funny now. At the time, were not funny,
yeah,
obviously. But yeah, it is a risk. We are going through a risk, and people just don't realize that being a carer is not as easy as it seems to be.
I want us to jump straight into COVID because you'll have been working all through that. I think that'll bring a lot of stuff out. So what I want to look at with COVID generally is going into the lockdown, how your work changed then. Did it increase? Did it decrease? Did it just stay the same? And then coming out of COVID, what have been the changes for you, sort of long term, if there have been any?
Well, going into COVID was extremely difficult, and I think it was more difficult for the clients than it was for us, because just imagine having dementia or having any mental health problem or disorder and having to see someone coming into your house with a mask, with a visor, with full PPE. We were all looking like aliens, I'll
Mm.
be honest. And it was causing them a lot of distress, which didn't necessarily help with their quality of life and the service that we were providing, because we had to follow, the infection control policy that the government was putting in place. So it was really difficult, I think, for them. It was also difficult for us because we had to make sure that the care team was following the regulations and they were wearing the PPE. We had a lot of people that refused to wear a mask, refused to get vaccinated. Then the government told us that if they don't get vaccinated, they should go through dismissal. We had to have meetings with staff and encourage them to have the vaccinations. And the ones, a lot of them that didn't want to have the vaccination, they left the job. So it was a very difficult period. Not to say that it was really hard to keep on top with all the regulations that were changing every single day. No one knew what we're supposed to do when someone tests positive, when someone comes out of hospital, when this happens, when the other happens. It was a mess. It was a whole mess every single day. Walking into work, it was stressful, very stressful for everyone. All I did was work throughout COVID. It was constant. We would come home, we would get phone calls, someone tested positive for COVID, one of the clients went into hospital, they came back with COVID. It was constant every single day. It was just COVID this, COVID.
So the sort of coming out of it aspect, I mean, do you feel like you've come out of it? I guess it's settled down a bit more than it had, but I mean, I'm imagining it took longer for you guys to feel like this is more like pre-COVID times, or has that feeling just not come back?
It came back to a certain extent
Uh-huh.
in terms of us being able to go to people's homes and be close to them and be able to have a conversation with them and not having to keep 2 meters apart
Yeah.
and not having to wear a mask and things like this, which has been great. And people, everyone, not just the clients, but the staff are enjoying it. I think it's really difficult because since coming out of COVID, recruitment for this sector is been particularly bad. So a lot of people have now chose to have jobs which mean that they work from home. They don't need to go physically to work. We then had the issues with the cost of living crisis, with the fuel being so expensive. So one particular reason why people refuse to do care anymore is because they had to put fuel in their car because they had to drive around to people's homes. And although we are paying mileage, it's still not making up for the amount of fuel that they have to put in their car. So it's quite unsustainable at the minute.
Is there anything that's changed for you guys coming out of it? I mean, has there been any benefits? I mean, is it easier to kind of corral people and communicate now? Do you have more regular online meetings that are more successful? You don't have to get everyone around, or like, has anything improved?
It has improved in terms of people using technology, which I absolutely love. People are more keen now to use technology than they were before. I really like the fact that through COVID, they started implementing these digital systems for the care companies, which have been a great success for all the businesses that I know. It's nice to be able to have everything in real time and be able to check something instead of having pieces of paper everywhere and having to run around and collect everything and misplace them and keeping a track of them and archiving everything. So I think in terms of the technology, there's been a massive improvement in the sector as an all. I do think that since coming out of COVID, it's been way more difficult for us in terms of recruitment and getting people to come and work in the health and social care sector. But the improvement is still there. I think communication and technology has definitely improved throughout COVID.
Do you feel like there's also a sense of preparedness there now that there wasn't before? Of like, okay, well, if it all goes, incredibly wrong, we've got these kind of strategies. We know we can move pretty fast. We're pretty strong in these areas. I mean, does that give you any kind of confidence for any kind of potential future shocks?
Yeah, definitely. And I think all the businesses have taken the contingency plan way more serious
Mm.
than they used to before. So everyone now has a contingency plan for lateness, for high level of sickness, for natural disasters, for pandemics and things like this. So I think it has definitely helped with that, and people feel way more secure to know that in the event that something happens, there is a plan in place,
Yeah.
and people are even more understanding than they used to be before. I mean, I can tell you that pre-COVID, if I was 5 minutes late to a client, a lot of them would kick off and say, "Ah, why are you late? I'll call the office, I'll make a complaint, this and that. I want you here at 10 on the dot." But then through COVID, they actually understood that we have to go and see other people, that some people are getting ill and they're taking more time and things like this. So people have became more understanding than what they used to be before COVID, which
Yeah,
has
I mean,
also helped.
when you're trying to schedule as many appointments as possible and trying to be realistic with them and give people enough time, even still, there needs to be so much flex because you're dealing with people who need care. They don't run to timetables. Like sickness doesn't run of like, oh
Mm.
well, I'll be ill for these hours and then I'll be okay. So yeah, you're gonna always struggle with that. Always struggle to make appointments and so unless you've got you know so many people available to you. There you go.
You don't. That's the thing. You don't. I remember my colleague always used to say to care staff, "Do you think that I have a carer in my drawer that I can just pull out every time you're running late or you're falling sick?" And I can actually relate to that. People think that it's so easy to coordinate care and to send people to all these different places of Leeds and make sure that they're always in time, that there is no traffic or any other factors that could make them late. Pre-COVID, people definitely didn't understand that. We still have the odd occasions, even now, when people complain about it, but the majority of the people are way more understanding.
So I'll move us on to we'll do climate change first. I'm not sure necessarily about impacts for you here, but I would imagine that heat might be a big one, especially with older people when we've had really hot days. In your role, do you see any effects from it, or is there anything that you can do to kind of reduce impacts or create awareness within the company about doing anything about climate change?
I mean, we do. If you just think about the fact that everyone went into a digital system, that is already a massive improvement. That is helping the environment. We're printing less and less and less pieces of paper, which I believe is great. We are trying to make the rotas, especially in domiciliary care, the schedules for people are made in an effective way, so they don't need to travel from one side of Leeds to another side of Leeds, which obviously will pollute. We're trying to encourage people to get electric cars or to cycle to work if possible. In the past, we employed people that had scooters, we employed people that had bikes. We definitely do our bit, especially for our city and for the world in general. And we try to bring awareness with the people that we see, with the carers that we have, with everyone, because I think it's if every single person does its own little bit, it will make a massive difference. But if we all just ignore what's happening in the world and we just carry on doing whatever we want to do, we all we're going to do is ruin this world for our kids, for our grandkids, and the other generations that come after us. And I personally don't want that. I want my children to be able to eat food that tastes like food. I want my children to be able to have winter and summer and spring and autumn. I want them to enjoy everything that I enjoyed when I was a kid. And I feel like we're losing a lot of these things because of the climate change.
Yeah, and social change as well. Just being more mediated, being more busy. Um, I mean, have you like work-wise and sort of stress-wise through that period and into now? I mean, there was a lot of discussion of mental health and this, that, and the other around the time. How have you managed the stress of like going through all of that, the pandemic, the extra hours, that like dealing with all of the disasters as they come up? I mean, is it just Tuesday to you? Is it like
Kind of, yeah. I always say this to people and everyone laughs. I'm Romanian, so we are born like this, you know.
It's
If
all on
if
fire.
you
Yeah, that's
tell
fine.
if you tell my granddad that you have depression, he's going to probably slap you behind the head and say, "What's that? Depression, go to work." So yeah, I think is because the way that I grew up, in particular, where I've never heard of people being depressed, I never heard of anxiety, I never heard of mental health in general. People just like carried on, constantly. I don't think I have been mentally as affected as other people that are constantly hitting anxiety, this, that, mental health, depression, because I feel that we're also quite manipulated by what's happening in the world and by a lot of repetitive words that then get stuck into our brain. And then we just associate certain feelings with a certain word afterwards. I'm not saying that depression doesn't exist or anxiety. It does. And I know myself people that suffer of it, but I don't think necessarily that all the people that say that they have it, they actually have it.
There's a really interesting book called Crazy Like Us. It's called The Globalization of, I think, American Mental Illness, but it's talking about, the SMV4 and the various diagnostic and statistical manuals for psychology. But he goes through various chapters where he's sort of talking about how anorexia was kind of formulated, and then that formulation of it kind of moved to somewhere else, but then it manifested in a different way. And then there's a really long conversation about PTSD and how Western ideas of PTSD were kind of put onto Sri Lanka after the tsunami. And that kind of messed things up because they had their own cultural way of dealing with traumas and so on. So it's this idea that, although the conditions are kind of manifestations of illness, you know, in any kind of normal illness way, but then they're very culturally different. So it's not like everybody experiences, an eating disorder or PTSD in the same way or the same context.
Definitely.
Because it's medicalized, there's this kind of assumption, isn't there, of like, all right, well, this is the disease, so it's like this, so it's like this for everyone.
I think that also because it's overused, a lot of people that actually need it, they're not getting the help because of so many people on the way, if that makes sense, that don't necessarily need it, but they're just getting stuck because, there is just a certain amount of people that can work at mental health services, and the services are not unlimited. So it is quite difficult. And, on that end, on my end, I do my bit to try not to use GP services and hospitals and whatever if I don't need to. I do my bit. I sometimes treat myself at home for a cold or a flu or whatever. There is no need to go and see a doctor or call a doctor or go to hospital. And I try to do my side
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that other people can get the service when they need it. But obviously, not everyone thinks like me. Not everyone makes the effort. Not everyone wants to think about other people, because as a society at the minute, we are quite selfish and we just think about our own benefits and our own goods and what makes us feel happy. We don't necessarily think the impact the decision that we make will have on other people.
Like, by the same token, there's a lot of people who don't go to the doctor and who don't go enough and who don't get conditions seen and dealt with that should be, and people that self-diagnose and all of this kind of stuff as well.
Yeah.
Are you quite good at, are you realistic with it? Of like, when you're ill and you run down, you stop? Or are you kind of like, no, I've got to keep working no matter what?
No, I believe that I'm quite realistic. I know myself and I know my body quite well. And I learned how to know my body quite well, if that makes sense. I have had quite a few illnesses in the past, and those have helped me understand my body better. There are times when I keep going because I know that I can. And there are times when I say, no, I need to stop because my body's telling me that I need to stop.
Yeah.
I will never not go to work because I've got a cold or a flu. That's just not part of my book in my Bible. Obviously, I take precautions. I don't go and stay in rooms with people. I open windows. Like I know how to follow infection control, if that makes sense.
Not going and sneezing on everyone.
No, 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 definitely, definitely. But yeah, I feel like through some illnesses, you can carry on going, and through some, you just need to stop and you need to be realistic and say, listen, I just need to rest. I need to let my body rest. And sometimes, the body sends you signals. It's not necessarily an illness, it's just telling you, listen, you need to stop, you need to take a break, take a day or take 2 days, sleep, eat, do whatever, and then get back on track. And I do have days like that. And I think we all do. We all have days when we need to take a break from everything.
And that can be, whether you've been working flat out doing something really physical for hours or days, or you've just been sitting around waiting for work to happen, because that can be exhausting in its own way as well, where you just sort of like, something happened, sitting around waiting. Yeah, well, while we're still in the sort of climate region, just want to have a quick chat about plastic, particularly PPE. That will have been a nightmare, I'm guessing, for you. I'm guessing and possibly still is. And you will have had similar issues of like, okay, we need all of this. We haven't got enough supplies. Now we have to get supplies. Then we have to wait for the supplies. Now we've got all the supplies.
And now we're at the
now we
point.
need to get rid of them.
Exactly. We are now at the point where we're getting rid of a lot of supplies because they're expired. And I promise you that nothing breaks my heart more than having to throw something that has nothing wrong with it just because it's out of date. And I can have this argument all day long with everyone about masks. And someone please explain to me how masks that are sealed in a package can expire. I can understand the hand sanitizer, 100% is a topic product that you put on your body. I will never question that. For masks, really?
What have you got in there that's
Exactly.
special?
It's not like you
It's
put
got
some
this charcoal microbes in that all evaporate. No, it hasn't.
No, it doesn't. So that was for me was the hardest part because I never wanted to get rid of the PPE. It was a lot of waste. We had, I think, around 200 boxes, 300 boxes of masks that we just had to like throw away.
Yeah. And then at some point, you're probably going to need them again. And it'll be like, I'll have to source all these masks again.
Yeah, I mean, we're still using masks even to this day. I think people are way more aware of bacteria in general. So whenever someone has a bit of a cold or they're starting a bit with the flu and they're coming at work, they are self-aware and they're actually wearing a mask. All my staff are doing that. Also, when people come out of hospitals and they have COVID, we still wear a mask. If anyone has any sort of symptoms, we still wear a mask. So I don't think the masks are fully gone, and I don't think they will ever be fully gone.
No.
Especially now that people have got used to using them.
Yeah.
It was a real struggle to get people to use them to start with.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just remember that it was a real struggle to get people to wash their hands, which is shocking, you know.
Yeah. Are any of the people that you look after, do they feel effects from when it's been really hot or when it's, I don't know, when it's been just raining for months on end or something like that? Does that have impacts?
It does have impact in our service. And just think that we go and visit people sometimes 3 times a day, for instance. These people have no one, they have no family. The majority of them have no family, have no friends, have no one that come and visit them other than us. So making sure that you leave enough liquid for them, enough water, enough food, make sure that they stay hydrated. It's been really difficult with people that have Alzheimer's disease, for example, and they can't remember. So although you do leave the drinks there for them, they're never going to drink them. So you go back and all the drinks are there because there is no one to remind them that they should be drinking more water because it's hot outside, because they don't realize. So the second that you start having, issues with your brain and your brain is not operating the way it should, I think it makes it very difficult for people. So it definitely has an impact. The cold, the hot. It also has an impact on our care staff because they have to travel through these temperatures. When it rains, there are more accidents that are happening. People have less visibility. People that walk, for example, that take a bus to go to work and then they walk on between houses. They have to go through rain, so snow sometimes, which is very unusual in the UK. But everything stops. When there is snow in the UK, everything stops. So how do you make sure that you go to someone's house that has medication that has to be given at a certain time, but you're stuck in traffic because no one is moving? So I think the only option would be to buy a helicopter. But I don't think, yeah, I don't think a small company or even a bigger company could afford it. So it definitely has an impact. Everything can have and has potential to have an impact on the service.
Yeah. And mostly it's kind of negative, isn't it? It's kind of like, oh, something's changed, so that's going to make it more difficult for us to deliver this care.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's do Brexit and then we'll do social media. So Brexit has happened apparently.
Yeah.
Has it made any difference to your work?
It, it has made a difference in terms of recruitment. The Sadly, the majority of the people that work for us and with us are immigrants. So it has had a massive impact on the recruitment. We went through waves of dry patches with zero people applying. A lot of people that were working for us have left and returned back to their countries during Brexit because there was
Is that
so
non-EU as well as EU people?
yeah, yeah. There were plenty of speculations. It was again no clear guidance from the government of what's going to happen after Brexit. What what are people going to see and experience after Brexit? So a lot of people got scared. A lot of people said, "I'm selling everything. I'm going back to my country, whatever that is." So it has had an impact in the working part of the whole country. It's been really, really difficult to recruit throughout, I'll be honest. Very, very difficult.
I mean, I imagine they're not all sort of advanced, like you need qualified people for every role sort of thing. But wherever there is, you can't just pull someone off the street for those kind of roles. They need to be trained up and they need
Exactly.
time and experience. I mean, are there any parts, have you been able to kind of break things away and have you been able to do anything in terms of farming out bits of things to try and make things work better? Or is it just always doing what you can?
We tried
Yeah.
many things. We tried to encourage people, we tried to give bonuses to people. Even at the minute I am recruiting and I've put £500 startup bonus and no one is applying. So it goes through waves. Recruitment is always the hardest part of every business, in my opinion, regardless if it's this sector or any other sector. Recruiting people is always hard because people come and go. People don't really stay anymore in a job. We're not like back in the days when my mom used to work 20 years at the same company and you were quite badly seen if you would jump from a job to another. Now, if you had 20 jobs by the age of 30, people will look at you and think, wow, she's got plenty of skills, a lot of knowledge. When in essence, it's not like that. If you don't get stuck with the company through the good and the bad, then that to me just shows that you're not made for it. Because every business has its up and downs. Is about the people that stick with you in the hard times and the people that want to help you get through those hard times that matter. So people don't necessarily have the work ethic that we used to have before. I think it's about finding that company that gives you what you need, because everyone's needs are different. Everyone has a different dream and they're driven by different things. Some people are driven by money, other people are driven by rewards, other people are driven by other people telling them you're doing a fabulous job. I'm just driven by, I don't know, by me wanting to do what I want to do and enjoying what I'm doing. That's what drives me. I want to go and do a job with pleasure and feel satisfaction at the end of the day that I've made a difference in someone's life. To me, that's what's more important. But obviously, money is important. So I wouldn't do this for 20K a year, for example, but I would do it for 40K a year. So everyone has a price tag.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is because of the price, like you mentioned, the cost of living and obviously 10 years of austerity and sort of stagnating wages, is that people can't afford to do anything on those wages. So they're looking to get into a management role or anything like that as soon as they can. The
And as
best
soon
way
as
to
they
do
get
that is,
in, they get out. I promise
well,
you.
yeah. But I mean, if you're looking for the money, if you want to go into healthcare now or even education, like once you got the training, why would you not go to Dubai straight away? I get people doing it, but also like I agree with you, it doesn't help.
It definitely doesn't help. It doesn't help the society in general.
It's just accelerating additional problems, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, talking about accelerating additional problems, let's talk about social media.
Whoa.
So, in your role, I mean, I guess you don't have to do it much, but I guess there's some that you have to do. Like, how much time do you have to spend on social media and the time that you do have to do for work, if you have to do any? Do you feel that's a good use of your time? Do you get what you want out of social media? Does it give you the benefits that you want to get?
I don't necessarily do as much social media because we do have a marketing team that does that for us. However, I still involve social media in my work. So I still post on LinkedIn, jobs going around. I post in groups, in Facebook, groups about work and people that are interested in jobs and sort of services and things like this. So I still play with social media a bit in terms of work. Um, it has had some impact. I think through social media, you can reach out more people
Mhm.
and a wider audience that you would do with TV, for instance. Only a quarter of the population of this world still watches TV.
Mhm.
The rest are on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all these social media platforms. So I think it does to a certain extent help.
Mhm.
However, I think it's still difficult in terms of GDPR, data protection. Um, you need to gain consent from people before posting anything. You have to be aware of what you're saying, how you say it. And I just feel like, although, we did fight so much for democracy over the years, uh, we don't necessarily have it. We don't have it on social media. You can't just speak your mind out or say whatever you want to say on social media because you will then have HR on your back. So, yeah, it's
Or Elon Musk or
Oh,
Mark
yeah,
Zuckerberg.
yeah.
I mean, like, I'm going to ask you this question anyway because I've thought of it, but because we see a lot of stuff when people, when the media, other media always denigrate newer media. So older media always slag off the newer media of like, well, they're not proper media, not like us. So a lot of the stuff that you hear about how terrible the internet is often comes from other media, like older media. And I think a lot of it's true, a lot of it is terrible. But flip side of it, some of it's quite good. You know, we obviously keep it around because it has good things. Do you think, or can you imagine any potential health benefits from it? I mean, like with the people that you're looking after, I mean, you know, when this generation of kids grows up, we would expect all of them to be on social media if it hasn't completely destroyed our brains at that point. But do you think there's any potential health benefit? Like, could you imagine a situation where some of the people you look after are like they're using that and it's giving them the societal benefit, you know, the connection benefits, the health benefits of knowing people, being able to interact with people, and essentially some of the stuff that you're giving in terms of the visits of human company.
Yeah.
Like, do you think there's any possibility of benefits there from social media?
There are plenty of benefits,
Yeah.
plenty. I think there are disadvantages, 100%, especially for people that are not educated. I think it comes down to education. If you're educated on how to navigate the internet, how to stay safe, um, whilst using internet, I think you are safe. If you go onto the internet and you let yourself getting scammed or people getting your data and your information and things like this, then obviously it's not safe. And it's a lot easier to do that with vulnerable people. So I think there is definitely ways of making the internet safer for people that are vulnerable. But I think they should start, if you ask me, teaching kids in school on how to stay safe online. I think that's definitely a topic that they should learn at school because no one taught us.
Yeah.
No
Well,
one told us how to use the internet and to be careful of all the things that could happen.
you should have to be over 18 to use it.
Yeah.
I don't think most people, apart from people who are under 18, most people would be like, yeah, that's fine. I know if I was under 18, I'd be like, no, that's not fair.
Sure. I mean, even for kids, I still see a benefit on kids using internet. It's
Like,
great for them to be able to just click and find the answer to one of their questions. I think it's nice for them to be able to play games in line with other friends and socialize with them. And I think especially through COVID it's been quite beneficial for them because they were able to continue schooling even from home during the pandemic. So there is definitely benefit, but in terms of old people that we look after, they had plenty of benefits of being, and they still have it. They're able to talk to their family members through an iPad, family members that are in Australia or in New Zealand or in another side of the world. They're able to talk to friends through FaceTime. They're able to play games as well that help them with their memory. We have a gentleman that has Alzheimer's disease, and he does have these Sudoku games and everything that he plays every single day to train his brain, to keep his brain going. So I think there is a massive benefit from using internet, and I would definitely recommend for people to continue using it. And I do encourage a lot of people to use it as well in a safe way, obviously. But yeah,
if you could change any three things about your work, I think I know at least one of
only
them.
three.
Well, you can go really big. You can be as big as you want.
I think the main thing that I would change about my work and about the sector in general is the recognition that it gets. I think people and the government in general should recognize the health and social care sector more, and especially the care staff more. Not necessarily us, the people that work in an office and try their very best, because we all do. We all try our very best to follow regulations, to make sure that everyone is safe at all times, to complete the insane amount of paperwork that we have to complete every single day, which is the biggest waste of time sometimes, that keeps you away from actually
Yeah.
making a difference in people's life and spending the time with them and giving them the compassion and the company that they need. But I would definitely make people more aware of the sector and make it feel more important than what people actually make it look like.
Is that one change, or is that all your changes? That's your main change.
That's the main change that I would make, because if that change would happen, if the health and social care sector would get recognized as an actual profession, and you would be able to be a skilled worker by doing this, when at the minute being a carer is classed as unskilled work. But if you think about it, you can't do it without getting trained, so you still need to be skilled to a certain extent.
There's questions I want to ask, but I'm not going to ask you them.
No, go ahead.
There's areas that I want to go into. Yeah, but it's not really like apt. Because if you're thinking from a cost thing, you know, you're looking at the balance sheet. What's the social benefit of paying for it? You know, on a balance sheet. We know the answer to that, but if you sort of, if you are just being money oriented, like, well, get rid of it. It's an expense that we don't need, and half of the people aren't economically productive anyway. It's an unnecessary cost. But then it's like, well, those people will still be around, will exist. So, yeah, in terms of seeing it as more important.
The way I see it, personally, I agree with you, it is a cost. And as you know, everyone has its own perspective on things. My perspective is, if my parents, for instance, tomorrow, they were to get ill, they were to not be able to do anything for themselves, that would mean that I will have to leave my job to look after my parents. So if I leave my job to look after my parents, my skills and my company will suffer. My skills will suffer because I'm not using them. So I'm not creating more money for the society. I'm not in work. My company will not benefit because I'll have to leave my work, which means they will have to invest more money into employing someone, into recruitment campaigns, into interviewing people, into training people, when they already have someone that can do everything and they don't need to invest a penny other than paying their wage. So it will have an impact on the economy, because if in a house one person has to stay at home and look after everyone, that doesn't bring money to the government. It doesn't bring money to the house. It doesn't bring money to the company. So it's still causing an impact if you stay at home and you don't invest in the health and social care sector.
I mean, I suppose what I was trying to get to is the whole sort of thing of, well, it's not a cost, it's an investment. It's an investment not just in the person and the individual, and in the wider society of being, more compassionate, more civilized, for want of a better expression. It has inherent value. We shouldn't be penny pinching with it.
Yeah. It is a cost, I think, that also brings money back.
Yeah.
Because it creates a job, and the government still benefits from those jobs because we pay taxes and we pay national insurance number and we pay pension and we pay everything. We pay the air that we breathe.
Okay, so I mean, in terms of other changes, I was assuming that I guess you would want more staff, more money and resources.
Plenty if possible.
And less PPE.
Definitely.
Okay, so final question of my questions. So if there was a universal basic income, how do you think that might change your work?
I think it will have both positive and negative impact. I can see the pros and the cons of it. I think it will have a negative impact in the sense that people will be comfortable with receiving an amount of money every month no matter what. So they wouldn't necessarily want to put the effort to go back to work, which will create issues.
Well, it'll drive everyone mad because they'll be bored.
Don't worry. If you have money, you can never get bored. I can promise you that.
Yeah, but the thing is, you do, because it's just the same stuff. There's always, I think you need a level of toil. You know what I mean? Yeah, you need a level of struggle and a level of challenge, and you also need that socially, I think, because if you're just talking to other people about how, oh, everything's so easy and so fantastic, that gets boring quite fast.
It does,
but also, yeah, you can spend the day not doing anything easily.
I promise you, there is plenty of people that do that already. Me personally, I could never. I think, and I always say to everyone that my life plan is to retire on my mid-40s. That's why I work so hard now. But when I say retire, I mean stop working so full time and start living life and traveling around the world if possible, and then just have a sort of job that I can do from anywhere, that I can work part time or, still have a contribution to society, if that makes sense, but not necessarily to the level that I'm doing it now. I think people will benefit from this program in terms of poverty, and that was the main reason why they put this program forward, was for poverty not to happen anymore. But then how can you pick who to help and who not to help? How fair could you be in helping some people but don't helping others? Because in my opinion, you should help all the single moms in the world, but then you shouldn't help people that are, fully fit to go to work. But that's my opinion. Then everyone will have a different opinion and will say, no, why would you help single moms? They chose to be moms. Fair point. I choose not to be a mom at the minute because I know that I couldn't afford to stay at home and look after my kids and not have an income or live on whatever the government would pay me to stay at home. And I wouldn't want my kids necessarily to have to go through that. So I work hard enough now so that I can afford to have kids in future. But again, that's my opinion. I can't stop someone from having kids. I can't stop someone from making good or bad decisions, because everyone is responsible for their own life. As soon as you don't harm others, in my opinion, you can do whatever you want. So yeah, it is a good program and a bad program in the same sentence. If you look at it, it does have benefits, but it definitely also has disadvantages to it.
So this is the point where I throw the interview over to you to talk about anything that you might want to talk about that we haven't discussed yet, or if you want to revisit anything, or you want to publicize anything, or you just want to do a recruitment act. Come and get a job. Come and help.
Come and get a job. I'm a nice manager. No, well, I think as an overall, if people would talk more about the sector, if people will say the benefits and the rewards that you get as being a carer, will definitely help others understand this job better. I feel like sometimes job descriptions don't necessarily describe what being a carer means, because being a carer is not just going and doing personal care for someone. Being a carer is not just administering medication. Being a carer means having a heart, and having a very big heart, and understanding what other people needs and doing in a person-centered manner, because what you need is not the same thing that another person needs. And what I believe is not the same thing that you believe.
Thank you again to Alina for being my guest. Thanks, as always, to all my guests. And thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. If you'd like to know more about Alina, go to LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Alina-Manaila. Link is in the show notes. If you're working or living or caring in an LS postcode, or if you're from Leeds and working anywhere in the world, whatever way you are, Leeds, I would love you to be one of the 1,000 loiners to help me make working hours. Please be my guest on this podcast. It's free and you get to proof what you said before I publish anything. You can email workinghours@workinghourspod@western-studios.com if you would like to make a podcast series. You might. Don't forget you can do that and support Working Hours at the same time by buying podcast services from me, which is Western Studios Leeds Limited. Email makemypodcast@western-studios.com. Okay, that's me. Work for peace and plan with kindness. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and be kind to each other, Leeds. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Go to western-studios.com and use the contact page on the site to drop me a message about either Working Hours or about your own Leeds podcast project. Keep up to date with Working Hours and find out about the other great Leeds podcasts that Western Studios is involved with by following Western Studios Leeds on Facebook at facebook.com/Western_Studios_Leeds and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Western Studios Leeds is available to loiners to help them realise their own podcast projects for only £30 for an hour of audio podcast work or £40 for an hour of video podcast work. Email makemypodcast@western-studios.com with details of your project and what support you want to get your Leeds podcast made. Whatever your podcast question or need, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds.